our back. We're going to bring feet off the floor. I want the hips to be a little bit less than 90 degrees. Knees can be right at 90 degrees. We're going to bring our arms and point straight up to the ceiling. And I want to reach and feel the shoulder blades lift off the floor. And then I want to spread the shoulder blades as wide as possible on the floor, keeping the arms up towards the ceiling. I want to feel that upper body spread. This is where I want to imagine we're laying in a sand pit. And I want to press and engage the shoulder blades. I want to downwardly press them into the sand because I want to make a really nice imprint in the sand of my shoulders, my shoulder blades specifically. Elbows can now softly come down and touch the floor for a little bit of extra leverage, but maintain that imprint of the shoulder blades. The shoulder blades staying imprinted in the sand is the most important part of this movement. I want to work on feeling that in posterior core engagement of the shoulders. We're going to get into our hip rotations, but I don't want to smear my imprint in the sand. I don't want that shoulder to lift or slide around at all. So we can start letting the hips rotate slowly and lightly in one direction, only going as far as you can maintain that solid downward pressure in the shoulders. And then inhale to center, exhale as we rotate to the other side. And with each one, you can see if you can start to get a little bigger in that rotation. But again, without losing your imprint in the sand, maintain that downward pressure through the shoulder blades. We're trying to get that downward pressure. This is going to be a part of our primal core flow. So I want to feel this now because it's going to be a little bit easier to feel it when we get into the next part of our movement with it. With each one, we're seeing if we can squeeze a little bit more range in each direction, but we're also assessing how much rotation, lumbar rotation, do you have moving to the left? Does it feel tighter on the right side compared to how far you're able to go to the right and what you feel on the left side? I have less range of motion when I rotate to my left. I feel more tightness in my right side low back. That's kind of a chronic area for me. When I rotate to the right, it feels smooth and I have a lot more access to movement. I can keep this shoulder really solidly on the ground. We're going to go ahead and put our feet flat to the floor. I want to keep that downward pressure through our shoulder blades. In fact, I want to go ahead and bring elbows off the floor. I want to have hands kind of pointed up to the ceiling, but shoulder blades are still spread and grounded down. We're going to come back into breath with pelvic tilts. Breathing into our belly. Feel that belly lift. Don't let your shoulders disengage. Exhale. We're drawing the navel in. Let that belly button press your spine into the floor. We're getting a little bit of a scoop of the pelvis. Inhale. How far forward can you feel that pelvis tilt? Making sure we're not going into pinch or pain in the low back. Exhale. Can you scoop, and how much pressure can you feel of your belly button? I don't want to push through the feet right now. We're going to push through the feet in just a second, but I want the feet to be soft. I don't want to lift the sacrum off the floor in order to feel that pressure of the belly button. I want all of that movement to happen from your core, not from your feet. And as we start to feel that nice subtle movement of the pelvis, on our next inhale, as we inflate, on the exhale, as we press the spine, now we get to engage in our feet, and we're going to peel the sacrum off the floor. and then we're going to peel each vertebrae one at a time. And I want that to come from scooping that tailbone up. It's like you're trying to turn your tailbone up to the ceiling. Again, rib cage should be dropping as that pelvis is scooping. We're seeing how high can we come up? Can we feel some stretch through the front of the hips? And then on the inhale way down, we're seeing if we can touch one vertebrae at a time and place everything back down in the same way till we get to the sacrum. Inhale, allow that belly to lift. Exhale, flatten the spine first, and then peel the spine off the floor. Again, shoulder blades are still solidly pressed into the floor. I want to watch out for that rib cage jutting out on this. We're going to let that rib cage move in just a minute, but for right now, can you scoop with that rib cage dropped? Can you feel the stretch on the front of the hip? Can you feel the glutes tighten up and engage in the rear? If you're able to feel that, then I want to scoop into it a little bit more and get maximum engagement in the glutes. On the next one, as we exhale, getting to the top, we're going to stay at the top. And now we're going to come back and bring in our breath, allowing the rib cage to now flare. So inhale, pelvis is going to tilt forward, rib cage will stick out. Exhale, we're scooping as the rib cage drops. And we'll do a good 5 to 6 breaths. I want to maintain the height of our hips on this. The hips are rotating, but they're not dropping to the floor. And if you're able to keep those hips rotate or elevated and scoop, feeling that rib drop as you scoop, by the time you get to 5 or 6 breaths, your glutes should be lighting up on fire. And then we can go ahead and drop the hips back down to the floor. So now we're going to start getting into the next layer of the primal core flow. This is going to be significantly more challenging. This is where I expect a lot of people to start dropping off on their ability to do this next step. We're going to get back into that hip bridge, but we're going to be working more through our shoulders. And just to give you an idea what we're doing in our shoulders. So the shoulders should be downwardly pressed and engaged already. We're going to have scoop and be in that maximum hip drive with the rib cage down, drawn down. And I'm going to push that shoulder blade, I'm going to push it into the floor even more. And any downward pressure is going to create an upward reach on the other side. So by pushing down, it's going to lift my opposite shoulder up. I'm going to inhale, letting that shoulder back down, and then I'm pressing the opposite shoulder into the floor to lift. Now, to start off with, I'm not overly concerned with how high that shoulder comes off the ground. I'm more interested in, can you feel downward pressure, even if that other shoulder doesn't lift? Can you press and engage in the floor? And can you do the same thing on the opposite side? Does one side feel weaker than the other? That's going to be a good assessment point to start with. If you have weakness on one side, again, you're probably not going to get to the next level of this progression just yet. While we're doing this downward pressure, I want to make sure that we're keeping those hips elevated. If you feel the hip drop as you pull through one shoulder, then that's your core is not integrated. I want to keep those hips engaged as you press down. One last little teaching point on this. I don't want to reach my shoulder up. I can reach it up without pressing my opposite shoulder down. So this is not the movement. I'm not reaching up. It's pulling down lifts this side. I don't have to reach. It gets lifted up by pushing into that opposite side. So putting all that together, As we inhale, scoop, driving the hips, getting into this upper position, grounding through the floor. Can you press and lift? And if you can press and lift, then we can look at the next progression for this movement. I'm going to show it real quick. I know very few people are going to be able to do it the first time. What we're going to get into now is a thread through. So as I drive, hips come up, pressing that shoulder into the floor. My opposite foot, I have to lift my heel, so I got to press through the ball of the foot, and then I'm going to rotate onto the side of the shoulder as I thread that leg through. Bringing it all the way back in, coming back up to my hip bridge, I can then do the same thing to the other side. Driving shoulder down, lift to that ball of the foot, opposite foot comes up as I thread through. This is working on one half of our primal core flow. All right, so now we're going to switch to our chest, laying on our stomach. And we're going to get into the other half of the primal core flow, starting with elbow push-ups. I want to start by having my hands go straight out to the side with the palms down. And then we're going to spiral the palms up as we pull our elbows into our sides. My palms are now up, my forearms are flat to the ground. But I'm not laying on top of my arms. So I'm going to sit up to show this part. So hands are down. As I spiral my palms up, I am pulling my elbows into the side. I want to feel that medial epicondyle of the elbow, that elbow bone on the inside. I want to feel it touch the side of my ribs. I don't want to bring it underneath my body. I want to keep it out to the side. My chest gets to stay on the floor. Elbows come into this position. And what we're going to do is we're going to spiral, rotating palms down as we push through the elbows to do a push-up off of the floor. So let's get into that position. Palms are down, spiral, palms up as we pull elbows in. From here, we have two options with the legs. If this is new and we're working on good core, we're developing core, we don't quite have good core strength, we can lift the feet off the floor and we can be on our knees. I want to exhale, scoop the pelvis so that we feel the core engage. I want to feel the glutes tighten up lightly through that scoop. And as we exhale, we're going to spiral palms as we push up towards the ceiling. And then we're going to inhale. We're spiraling the palms up as we pull our elbows back in to that rib cage, side of our rib cage. So again, press, inhale down. If you're ready for the next progression to that, toes will go down. We're going to actively lift the knees up to the ceiling, scoop the pelvis as we exhale, spiral, drive through the elbows, lift. Inhale as you pull back down. These elbow pull-ups are a great progression for building up push-ups. So this is a good movement for push-up strength if push-ups are something that you want to improve on. Good. Now, next progression. Again, this is going to be where people start to drop off because neurologically this next part is really challenging. We're going to stay on elbow planks and we're going to do spirals through one side at a time. So it's going to drop us down to one side shoulder and then back up. The difficulty with this is how we spiral that arm, trying to pull that elbow in. A lot of people, when they get into this position, they try to drop their shoulder down to the floor. They try to reach with their shoulder, and they can't move through that arm. And so it's really, really difficult, challenging, and incredibly frustrating. So, try to get into this. So again, starting out on the floor, spiral up, getting my push-up onto elbow. And now I'm focusing on one side. I'm spiraling that palm up, and I am pulling my elbow so that medial epicondyle, that bony part, touches my rib cage. Once I'm here, I can very easily just roll onto my shoulder. And then I can roll off my shoulder, press, spiral back up to plank, and then do the same thing on the other side. But again, it's this spiral and pull in that is important. What I see a lot of people do is they're trying to drop through their shoulder, and they don't know how to spiral, and then they got this big drop. They don't have control. So it's pull that elbow in. It's almost like you're doing a cable pull or a row. You're pulling in, which feels counterintuitive because you have weight and load pushing into the floor. So it feels like you need to push, but you're really pulling. Again, it takes a little bit to wire that neurology to where that starts to make sense. So the last progression on this is a little simpler if you're able to get into that spiral, and that's going to be getting into our toe tap and our thread through. So as I spiral to my left side, I'm on my shoulder, I can bring that foot up to the ball of that foot, and I can start with just doing a toe tap. Tap, bring it back down, spiral to the other side, same thing. Tap that toe, all the way across. If that is easy, and we're ready for the next progression, then we can do our thread through. Spiral. As we tap that toe, now we're going to drive and thread that foot all the way into our hip bridge, which is where we just ended with the other side of this. And if we're able to get to that on this side, we ought to be able to complete the entire primal core flow, which looks like this.